So next up, we are joined by Executive Director Peter Wright from Greenwing Resources with the ticker code GW1, a green metals company focused on lithium and graphite.
Thanks, Jane. Look, Peter Wright's my name, as Jane said. I'm with Greenwing Resources. We've been working away for the last 7 or 8 years extremely diligently and hardly to sort of get to the juncture in our development where we're at today. It's a unique confluence of events. Given the time constraints, I will just speak at a high level. Anyone's welcome to get hold of me on email or phone. My details are at the bottom. So effectively, right commodities, right locations, right team and right time. The focus of our activity at the moment is the San Jorge lithium deposit in Lithium Triangle in Argentina. Why Greenwing? So Rick Anthon, who's our chairman, he's been involved with Orocobre, now Allchem, probably soon Levent, from its formative stages. We came together about 7 years ago with a view to putting a lithium graphite company together. We both were of a shared view, given previous experiences, that the world was heading to a dramatic shift to lower carbon intensity. We started with graphite. We built a graphite mine and operated it for 2 years. In Madagascar, we sold everything from super jumbo flake down to fine flake graphite. We had to close the mine down at the start of COVID. It was simply just not practical to mine there. In the interim, we decided to broaden our jurisdictional and commodity exposure by the San Jorge Lithium project in Argentina. The time elapsed, we've conducted a pretty comprehensive field program. We've attracted a fantastic major shareholder in NEO Inc. NEO are a $25 billion listed company on the New York Stock Exchange who invested $12 million. The company at 55 cents at the start of the year. We have a fantastic board and management. We work really well together. We're all deeply credentialed and experienced in lithium and graphite in particular. As I said, we've deliberately aligned ourselves with what we see are just irreversible trends, which will manifest itself into enduring supply deficits in lithium and graphite. I spoke there a little bit about the 20 months production at Graphmata. I can get into that later on. There's our mugshots. I didn't mention James Brown as well. So I've worked with James for the best part of 15 years in different capacities. James is also involved at Sayona Mine in Morella and of course with us. He's been in lithium for a long, long time, was MD of Altura Mining for a long time. We have Alan Zeng on there, who's the NEO representative. He's brought several different dimensions to the board with regard to end markets, procuring supply, where supply is at. It's been really interesting working with Alan and having him on the board. That's the San Jorge lithium project. That's the San Francisco Salar in particular. It's a 2,600 hectare salar. It's encompassed by a broader 36,000 hectare salar package. We own all of it. We went through an exhaustive due diligence process last year, as you can imagine, with a company of NEO's size. We also have the Millie's Reward hard rock project in Madagascar, which I can speak to. There's been some real paradigm shifts there with permitting in Madagascar over the last 6 months. A little bit on NEO there. NEO are a different company to what your perception might be of Chinese manufacturers. They manufacture high-end, high-quality cars. They've just got a 5-star ANCAP safety rating in Europe, which is reasonably impressive. They've come into us at 55 cents in January this year. The deal was actually agreed on about this time last year, so it's extraordinarily long time over the wall before we could announce it. Such was the due diligence process. Inclusive of that, they have an option to buy up to 40% of the project for $80 million US. That option goes live effectively upon declaring a JORC compliant resource. We've stated in our quarterly and again yesterday with our drill update that we anticipate declaring a resource at San Jorge, an initial resource, by the end of the year. We're drilling a 3-hole program at present. It's part of a 15-hole broader program, which we intend to do there, an appraisal of the San Jorge resource. And this is it. Here's a visual of the project. So you've got the San Francisco Salar there in the middle. We're firmly of the view that it extends off to the west as well, hence the first few holes have been drilled on the western edge of the salar. We own 100% of it. At surface, we barely breached 200 ppm, which is a head grade for other people. In the triangle, we've got up to 285 milligrams. And again, this was at surface. Geophysically, it's a depth of 600 meters, give or take 200 meters, which volumetrically implies there's a potential for a large resource there. As per yesterday's announcement, with our first hole at San Jorge, we perforated an initial unit of about 30 metres of mud, silt, clay, interspersed basalt, and we've reached what it looks like an upper aquifer. We're straight into brine mineralisation from 30 metres. We're still in it. We've sent away first samples. We were eagerly anticipating the return of those samples. We're taking porosity tests as we step through the drilling, and ultimately we'll do some downhole geophysics when the hole is completed. Again, we're targeting a maiden resource statement by the end of 2023. As far as DLE goes, we're aware of it. We're not going to deliberately align ourselves to one particular technology. We're stepping through a very careful process of evaluating several different options for us. It's a lithium triangle. I like to say the lithium triangle is to lithium what the Pilbara is to iron ore. It's the world's dominant jurisdiction at present. It's an established mining jurisdiction, established mining codes, workforce, consultants, operations. We have fantastic infrastructure. There's a highway that runs parallel to the deposit. It's easily reached from either Chile or nearby towns in Argentina. Corporate activity. So the most proximal salar to us is Neo Lithium, NEO, not to be confused with NIO, the car manufacturers. They sold their salar in 2021 to Zijin out of China for about $1 billion. That was at 637 parts per million. At the other end of the parts per million spectrum, Alpha Lithium, there's about 350 ppm who are currently underbid for about $250 million Canadian. And please bear in mind that we're a $35 million company. We have $9.5 million in the bank. We have no debt. So an enterprise value of $25 million at what, as I said, I think is a very compelling juncture of our progress. You can just see here's the drill rig there. You can see that the maiden drill hole, which is on the edge of the salar. The geophysics there is a bit obscured by my face on the presentation, but effectively off to the left-hand side of the salar, which is the west, we have a view that the mineralisation extends materially under some cover, hence the location of the first three holes all in the western periphery of the salar. So we think we've got a clear development pathway. We've been through this before, obviously with the graphite. James and I were critically involved in Altura for a long time, everything from Mount Webber, iron ore through to Pilgangoora. Rick has been there with Allchem, been involved in the critical stages of Orocobra's formation and development. So we are moving into those rapidly value accretive stages in a maiden drill program, bulk brine sampling, assessment of potential processing options, moving to a maiden mineral resource, the potential for an option to be exercised for $80 million US, which would imply a valuation of $200 million US for the entire project. We still have the Miller's Reward and the graphite, which if I could just... Miller's Reward in Madagascar, it's a hard rock project. We, for a variety of reasons, COVID, capital constraints, haven't done the work on this. We probably should have. The surface signature is borderline remarkable. You know, there's 6.9 to 7.1% rock chip samples over the entirety of the tenement package. We took a 31 metre trench sample at 3.7% lithium oxide, which is just unheard of. I'm heading back to Madagascar on Friday week. As I said, there's been some real movement. The mining code's about to pass over there, which we've been waiting for 5 years. I'm going to spend the week in Antananarivo working out the quickest pathway for us to get back on the ground there and start a thorough appraisal of what we think is an outstanding hard rock project, admittedly in its formative stages. Graphite, we mined in Madagascar for 20 months. We built the mine effectively from scratch. We've taken the resource from initial 5.4 million tonnes up to 62 million tonnes. This is a commercially proven resource. Technically, the project was a success. We put all concentrates to commercial specifications in bags. We had 43 different customers. We sold and qualified into all major markets, including the US and the Eurozone via Germany. We have 20-year mining permits there. We have current landholder agreements. We're effectively the current landholders there. The processing plant, we did 45% effectively large flake and above, concentrates 50% fine flake. And it's a statement of fact that we didn't have a tonne penalised, let alone rejected. over that 20 months. The main problem with the project was that, over 2018, whilst Donald Trump was fantastic at offending a lot of people, he was dreadful for lithium and graphite prices. And when we commissioned the project, we were getting $850 a tonne for fine flake graphite, which goes in phones, cars, computers, all the applications you would imagine. By the end of 2018, that price was down to $300 a tonne. We'd had a very tough first quarter with monsoonal rain in Madagascar, so we actually made the decision to put the mine on care and maintenance with the view that there was another monsoon coming. Funnily enough, it didn't rain, but in March, COVID erupted, and we were safely shut down by then. We sold every tonne we ever produced there. We're 3 kilometres off the national highway, 110 kilometres from the country's only deep water port at Tamatave. So, there will, just like lithium, we think there are enduring supply deficits coming in graphite. It hasn't been as quick to manifest itself as lithium has been. The graphite prices across the complex are still, only barely getting back to 60, 70% of where they were in 2018. So it's a tougher space. It's not as straightforward as lithium, but our view is the graphite's time will ultimately come. We sit there with a very well-developed exposure to graphite. We've grown the resource by circa a factor of 12 times over the last 6 or 7 years. There's a lot more graphite there. We intend to do more drilling. We intend to table a scoping study, an advanced study over the course of later this year or early next year as to what sort of steps we intend to take next with the graphite project. It's an established and growing resource there. We're starting to get some of our best hits in the south of the tenement package, which is really interesting. With larger resources, there are all sorts of interesting permutations of the assemblage of those resources, which we're starting to see. But again, reconciling back to a $25 million effective enterprise value, we think for what we're presenting to investors, we're a very reasonable proposition. Again, catalyst for the next 12 months. In an ideal world, we're very confident that we declare a resource at San Jorge in the latter months of this year. That triggers the option with NEO. It's an option in NEO's favour, but we would like to think that gets acted upon. From there, we go straight into the broader drilling program of 15 holes with a view to prove up a pretty material resource at San Jorge. We're stepping through DLE evaluation at the moment. There's no shortage of interest from DLE emerging companies. The graphite, we'll look to table an advanced study. The real potential mover, in addition to San Jorge over the back end of the year, is if we can get on the ground properly at Miller's Reward. The surface signatures there demands that we follow that project up with some comprehensive work. Point of the trip next week to Madagascar is to chart a path to that. A series of meetings, mines department, various consultants, working hand in hand with consular assistance from the Australian Embassy, who are outstanding. Been fantastic for us the entire time that we've been in Madagascar. So look, that's the overview. Apologies if I've taken too much time, Jane. I'm not sure if there is any time for questions. I can either take some now or refer people to my contact details.
No, Peter, that's great. I'm actually going to jump into a couple of questions now. So sure. You mentioned that the company aims to declare a resource in Argentina. So what the resource are you aiming for?
We haven't put out an exploration target yet, but we did a really comprehensive field program. There were two, I don't know if you call them bids, there were two entities in the data room last year seeking to be involved with the San Jorge project. They both did their own work on the project. All the portents seem to be there. 2 to 289 parts per million at surface, going down to up to 800 metres over a 26 hectare salar. I say in presentations, it's no time for excuses now. It's just the time for execution, and which we look forward to doing over the next 3 months, and hope to paint a very different picture of San Jorge other than really compelling surface work.
And I was going to get it out of you there. So when would initial testing start for the potential DLE technology?
We're in discussions with the group actually this morning, so we'll send some samples away there for testing. We've sent some previously, so now that we're taking brine samples daily, and we're in brine mineralisation as we speak. We were from 30 metres. We would like to think that that's materially above the 200 parts per million that we were getting at surface. Of course, we're not certain on that. At the end of the day, it's all buried rocks. We don't know what's in them across projects, commodities. But yeah, no, that process has started. We're in a position now to send samples to basically whoever wants them, and we can.
Perfect. Well, Peter, thank you so much for the great presentation and for joining us on Group Briefing.
Thanks for everyone's time.
You're welcome. So as Peter mentioned, please feel free to reach out via the contact details on the bottom of the ASX releases if you've got any other questions.